Thank you so much for tuning into this video. As the title of the video says, we will be talking about Rick Light today. If you have come to this video and have not seen my Janet video for Janet Light, I will have that link down below in the video description, along in a pinned comment down below as well. Please go check that out. But the title and of course the topic of this video is going to be covering Rick Light. Now, I know that obviously we don't have him out yet. We don't have the full behavior of his skills and everything. However, based on the behaviors of his skills, through analysis of looking at other heroes that have similar behaviors and such, we can really make educated assumptions, or just be confident in the fact that we can expect to see how this hero might behave, whether it be in the garrison or in the field. Now, with Rick himself, he is going to be essentially highlighted, or you're going to primarily see him shine in a Rider Garrison and paired with Chasey. He will have opportunities to shine in the field itself as well. However, in order to kind of capitalize on that and really, see him excel in the field, you are going to have to synergize him with Janet. And I don't want to go over that too much in this video, because a lot of that synergy kind of comes from Janet's side of things more so than his, to really enable that essentially like bi-directional synergy that they have. And so if you really want to see how Rick can shine in the field and what synergies and such make him excel at that point, when paired with Janet, again, I would direct you to the Janet video, link down below. I would go check that out there, and you can kind of see where maybe if you are a Rider player looking to use Rick in the field, that would be where you want to kind of go to expand on that a little bit. Now, again, the topic of this video being Rick Light, and highlighting again that we are going to be kind of conversating about him in a Garrison space, because as you can see from his talents being Rider, Garrison, and Attack, the Garrison should already be a clear indicator that they do want to put you in a Garrison scenario with him. Now, as we dive into his skills themselves, I've also created documents and essentially visuals to kind of show you how those synergies pair well with Chasey and what that may look like for you and what to kind of expect from that Garrison pair that you may have. And really, there's a couple open-ended questions that we do have that we're really going to have to wait until Rick does come out and he's fully transcended or starts to become transcended and such, in order to see how that behavior really starts to evolve as they are paired together. But we'll dive into it. We'll cover those things, and we will also go ahead and really dive into his talents also as well towards the end. All of these things will be timestamped below in the video description, so again, please navigate there if there's a part that you would like to go to. But let's just dive straight into it right away. Now, first off is his weapon. The passive skill here is going to be increasing basic attack damage by up to 40%. When Garrison, basic attacks have a 20% chance to reduce enemy rage by 30%, or I'm sorry, by 30, not 30%. This is great all around. I mean, obviously we have basic attack damage here, and obviously a chance to reduce rage is a great thing. However, there is one piece or component here, specifically within the basic attacks having a 20% chance to reduce enemy rage by 30, that I think is going to be kind of unique potentially, and has a chance to be exceptionally good. I mean, this already looks great on paper, but I believe that as we dive into some of the synergies here with Chasey, you'll start to see where this could have a potential to go from a good or a great weapon and passive skill to an exceptional or exceedingly great passive as well. So we'll take a look at that shortly. So just kind of bear that in mind, this specific portion here for the reduction in enemy rage. Going to Shark Spin. Basic attacks deal bonus damage 3,600 for the next 5 seconds. When not in a rally, has a 30% chance to deal additional basic attacks, or one additional basic attack per turn. These basic attacks will not trigger counterattacks from the enemy. So, I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory here. For every basic attack that is dealt during the next 5 seconds, there's going to be 3,600 skill damage or damage factor that's going to be dealt. Obviously, you want to utilize this in the field or in a garrison, because the second portion of it with the additional basic attacks is great. However, of course, you cannot be in a rally in order to make that happen. So I'm just going to breeze through this, because obviously you guys can read the skills yourself. And then, like I said, we're going to do the actual analysis deep dive side of things. So trick shooting. When not in a rally, for every 10 basic attacks dealt, deals damage to the target and heals self based on 30% of this damage dealt. Again, self-explanatory here. 10 basic attacks are dealt. When he's not in a rally, it's going to deal some skill damage to them, and he's going to heal 30% of that damage factor, skill damage that's dealt as well. Rider squad attack increases by 35% and rider squad damage increases by 10%. That's great. I mean, when you think about it, squad damage on an armament caps out at red at 5%. So that's technically 2 red squad damages, hones. So to get that much damage just out of a passive is wonderful. 35% attack. That's the equivalent of about 7 rider squad red hones on your armaments as well. So again, wonderful here. When the squad size is below 50%, rider squad damage further increases by 5% or an additional essentially red squad damage hone. So just all in all, great raw damage and damage output here, which is going to scale your basic attacks and your skill damage. Increases rider squad HP by 40%. One of the higher values that we've seen, we typically see this value around 30% for many heroes. I believe that on some of the TC heroes that you spend Splendid Steel on can also get up to 40%. So it's kind of on par with that there. So nothing too crazy here. Reduces damage taken from ranged squads by 10% with Garrison. So obviously we have a lot of Cedric rallies that we see nowadays. We also see a lot of Ethan rallies, Bard rallies, things like that. So this will just kind of help with that survivability factor as well there, because obviously that's going to be your main third damage. You don't typically see most of your damage on rider garrisons coming from the infantry side of things, not typically. So that'll help with some of the survivability factor there. I'm just going to look straight at the after transcending portion here. So when not in rally, basic attacks have a 20% chance to deal damage once up to 3 nearby enemies. This damage is affected by basic attack damage buffs, chance to increase to 100% if it's an additional basic attack. Bear in mind this last portion, chance increases to 100% if it's an additional basic attack. That's going to be one important piece to note here, along with the fact that this is essentially, there's no cooldown mentioned on this at all. So just at any point in time, your basic attacks have a 20% chance to deal essentially damage or AoE damage. And if it is an additional basic attack, then it's going to go up to 100%. Now, with all this in mind, obviously I breezed through that, but the reason why I breezed through that is because you can just, you can read that on your own. Let's actually dive into the why you're here, right? You want to know the parts that are unanswered just from looking at these things, because obviously we can all read these on our own. So let's take a look at the graphics that we have built out. So starting here, Rick and Chasey synergies. Now, obviously, I wrote it like that for a reason, and the reason is because when you go into Garrison, you're going to want a Garrison with Rick in the lead. You're going to say, "Oh, Z, what about the skill tree? I want to use the skill tree. What about the rage regen?" The highlight of this pair isn't the rage regen. It's going to be the basic attacks. And with the attack tree, you're going to get a lot more out of this synergy by utilizing the attack tree itself. And we'll take a look at that in the next graphic that I've built out. But for now, let's focus on the synergies. Now, I did number these skills 1, 2, 3, and 4. However, we're really only going to need to focus on skills 1 and 3. 2 and 4, I have it numbered just in case there was anything else throughout the process of creating this that I've kind of found on the synergetic side of things. But really, the main highlights come from these 2 skills and what they offer. So let's kind of dive into this. The arrows themselves kind of indicate, so you can see how this is a green 1, and everywhere that you see a green arrow is somewhere that it's providing benefit to. This is skill 3, and anywhere that you see a purple arrow is somewhere that this is also providing a benefit to. So to first start off, Lashing Whip on Chasey increases basic attack damage by 55%. Basic attacks have a 30% chance to reduce AoE damage taken by 20% for 3 seconds, and if inflicted by silence, has a 50% chance to deal 1 additional basic attack per turn for the duration of the effect. So 50% chance for 3 seconds during the effect of where basic attacks basically have a 30% chance to trigger and put you in a state or status where you're reducing AoE damage taken by 20% for those 3 seconds. While you're in that 3-second state, you do have a 50% chance to deal 1 additional basic attack. These basic attacks grant 20 additional rage. Now, let's focus on this middle part first, just because it's in your face, it's in the middle of the screen here. This is Rick's weapon. And if we come over here, because this kind of obviously flows into it as well, Shark Spin, which is the rage skill of Rick, basic attacks deal bonus damage for the next 5 seconds. When not in a rally, has a 30% chance to deal 1 additional basic attack per turn. These basic attacks will not trigger counterattacks from the enemy. Now, we have 2 skills here, where one, if you're silenced and when you go into this state for 3 seconds, and if you're inflicted with silence during that time, you basically have a 50% chance to deal an additional basic attack. So you have this skill here providing an opportunity to deal an additional basic attack. And this skill here, where when you're not in a rally, has a 30% chance to deal one additional basic attack as well. And this is during the 5 seconds that the rage skill is active. So one of my questions that I have is that if we are being silenced by, say, a Julia, but prior to being silenced, you use your rage skill, and for the next 5 seconds, you're dealing bonus damage, and you have a chance to deal an additional basic attack. If I use this rage skill as Rick, and I immediately get silenced during that 5-second period of time, and I proc this portion here, and I'm in this state here where I'm taking a reduction in AoE, and I've been silenced, because if inflicted with silence has a 50% chance to deal one additional basic attack. My question is, do I then deal a basic attack, plus one additional basic attack from here, plus one additional basic attack from here? Since these are two separate skills, with two separate potential chances to proc an additional basic attack, do those overlap and then allow for you to have a potential of up to 3 basic attacks in one turn as well? Or can you only deal one additional basic attack per turn? That's cap, like the total cap that you can do. If that is the cap, does this just mean that if you have both of these active, you have a much higher chance to then deal that one additional basic attack? Or again, do these skills overlap because they are not, directly the same skill or related in any way? And because of that, you can deal up to 3 basic attacks in one turn. So you would deal your basic attack, you would proc an additional basic attack from Shark Spin, and because you're silenced, you had that 50% chance, and then you also deal another additional basic attack. That would be interesting, because for one, that's a lot of damage, right? Especially like if Chasey's used her rage skill, and you're dealing the large sum of additional basic attack damage, right? That could be insane for the amount of damage that you're doing in that 1 second. However, when you look at Rick's weapon, the second portion that I told you to remember on, when Garrison, basic attacks have a 20% chance to reduce the enemy rage by 30. Now, if for the next 3 seconds here, while you're silenced, if you have 3 seconds where you could potentially be dealing up to 3 basic attacks, you could potentially be stealing, if you get lucky, up to 90 rage in that one turn or in that 1 second, right? Or if these just let's say you don't get lucky and these overlap, but they're just kind of like intertwined, where maybe you have this for 5 seconds, you have this for 3 seconds, it kind of goes back and forth. You could be stealing a lot of rage, you could be reducing a lot of rage from your enemy just off of the fact that these two would essentially be playing back and forth if you're fighting against like somebody that also is using a Julia rally, whether it be like on a multi-rally or on a single rally. So to me, this tells me that Julia just became far more irrelevant. Where obviously we don't see her as much already because we see a lot of Bards, we see a lot of Ethans, we see a lot of Cedrics, but there are, especially in lower G brackets where people don't have all of the newer heroes awakened and such, we do see a lot of Julia rallies. However, this may discourage that from happening because you do not want to be proccing the additional basic attacks where it synergizes with all these new skills, and also it's stealing essentially rage from you or whoever the tank rally is. So a little bit of interesting synergy here, but again, my biggest thing is like, if you have the bonus basic attack damage from Chasey and you're dealing 3 basic attacks in one turn, that is a significant amount of damage that you could be dealing. Because we already see her dealing a significant amount of damage in one turn when it's just her basic attack, not to mention 2 additionals happening in that same second. So very interesting here and something to keep in mind. Kind of a unique scenario, but I think it was something to definitely call out for sure. Now, just kind of staying on Lashing Whip, we can see that it still benefits Wits and Eloquence and Street Vaulter. So increases Rider squad attack by 36% when Garrison basic attacks have a 25% chance to deal damage to up to 3 units within range and inflict charm on them. Obviously, because there's an additional basic attack here that you're being provided, it does have the opportunity to go ahead and proc this and get that 4-second cooldown timer started. Same thing here, when not in a rally, basic attacks have a 20% chance to deal damage once to up to 3 nearby enemies. This damage is affected by attack damage buffs, and chance increases to 100% if it's an additional basic attack. So if you proc this here and you're doing an additional basic attack, it has a 100% chance to then go on ahead and do this AoE as well if it's an additional. So that's why this kind of synergizes these ways. And then here, the basic attack steal bonus damage. Obviously, if you're doing an additional basic attack during the time of having this up, that additional basic attack is also going to deal the bonus damage as well. So that's why it kind of synergizes these ways. Now, taking a look at Shark Spin, the reason why it kind of goes into these other ones here is that same exact thing. You deal an additional basic attack. It's going to be similar to Chasey's down here, or I'm sorry, the way that Chasey synergizes down here, where you could be inflicting charm, plus it does the AoE portion of it, and then the part down here where same thing. You're basically dealing AoE because of those additional basic attacks. Basic attacks have a chance to do AoE at that point. So the additional basic attacks from Shark Spin is going to synergize there. But then coming up here to Lashing Whip, the part up here that is to kind of call out is that these basic attacks grant 20 additional rage. I assume that that's going to be specifically just for Lashing Whip, but because it's talking about additional basic attacks, there is a chance that it grants additional rage. I wouldn't be so confident in it, but we have seen where IGG is kind of, sometimes their language isn't too great on the way that they say things, and things will work differently than we kind of expect it to based on how it's worded. So there is a chance there that it does grant additional rage because of the additional basic attack. And that's that's kind of just the one call. This is, I would put more of like a question mark here, but yeah, just a chance there. And obviously the increase to the basic attack of 55% is going to impact the additional basic attack that you're doing here. So there's that little bit of synergy as well too. So yeah, so that's kind of everything that I wanted to cover here. Obviously, I guess the other call out is that basic attacks have a 30% chance to reduce AoE damage taken by 20% for 3 seconds. The additional basic attack here would also be able to proc that as well, assuming that the additional basic attacks proc on hit passives and such. So just another way to potentially get more AoE damage reduction up for longer, basically, because you have more basic attacks being triggered. Now that we've kind of covered all those synergies, I know that that's a lot to take in because it's very bi-directional, but you can kind of see how it was almost like Rick was made for Chasey, and in a way, Chasey was almost made as a pre-setup for Rick. A lot of her kit kind of set up having somebody that does a lot with the additional basic attack portions of it and provides like an on-hit state for all those that are happening. This is also the first time where we have seen a hero that takes anything like basic or counterattack damage and utilizes that to then increase the skill damage on something. So everything from like the basic attack damage coming from the rebel weapon or Chasey's rage skill or all the other basic attack bonuses that you're getting, it's not just impacting basic attack damage, but it's actually increasing the skill damage on something as well. In this case, a passive skill for the AoE. So also an interesting portion of it. I think that's kind of a hint, really, the reason why I'm calling that out, that's a hint towards potential future releases of IGG that they bring out. Typically, when we see something like of a new mechanic come out, we see them utilize it in another way or in a similar effect for future skills or for future behaviors. So we may see in the future where counterattack for, like, say, Stella impacts the skill damage on a rage skill or on a passive skill as well. So something to just call out and keep an eye out for. Now, let's go here. So this is the talent tree for Rick. Now we have the attack tree over here, the rider tree, and the garrison tree. Now this is the recommended tree that they provide to you just right off the bat when you take a look into Rick. And I've kind of modified it a bit based on what I would do here. Obviously, having like some additional damage sustain and damage reduction when you are getting flanked or swarmed and stuff is great, especially for riders. However, in this case, I feel like, again, and I mentioned this in the Janet video, damage sustain and sustainability and your ability to survive comes in a few different shapes and sizes, right? It's not just flat damage reduction, it's not just flat defense, but it's also your ability to kind of kill your enemy, right? If you are reducing the damage that you take by a ton, but you're not actually dishing damage out as well, it doesn't really work in your favor. So the opposite of just damage reduction is also increasing the damage that you do, because as your enemies' squads shrink and get less and less, or their rallies become less and less faster and such because you have higher damage, they're also dealing less damage to you on a consistent basis too, because a not so full rally, as you've seen, will take more damage, troops will die faster, they deal less damage, that kind of a thing. So I feel like this is one of those situations where it is appropriate to trade off a little bit of additional damage sustain, because it does have the requirement of you being swarmed or in a multi-rally, that kind of a thing, in order to kind of capitalize on things that do also impact you not only in those situations, but also in single rally garrisons as well. So I opted to take out these talents. Just that's what the X's are for. Just take out talents for those altogether. Fill up these talents here. I also should have a green arrow here. I kind of forgot that, but a green arrow here. Just take this whole tree and go all the way to the end and get 4 out of 6 points on that. Removing all of these should give you, I believe it's 18 points, and this requires 20 to fill out the whole thing. And so you'll end up at 4 out of 6. But with this tree here that I'm providing, what essentially you'll end up with is that with this tree, you'll get 31% skill damage reduction, 8.25% HP, 9% defense, 7.5% attack. You'll get 26 rage regen total, whether it be through basic attacks or counter attacks, or while in garrison, just from these 3 rage nodes. 8% bonus damage to ranged squads are coming from here. You also get a rage recovery speed of plus 15% and 3% squad damage for 3 seconds after using a skill, which comes from here, which is nice. And then you also get up to 23% basic attack damage, which actually comes from these 2 nodes here. On this endpoint, with 4 out of 6, you have a 10% chance to enter Berserk, which increases your damage by 8% for 3 seconds. So if we pair those together, and let's say that you're taking a ranged rally, you take the 8% bonus damage here, you pair that with the 3% squad damage here that you gain after using a skill, pair that with the 8% bonus damage that you get to ranged squads here, and now all of a sudden you have a bonus total of 19% damage against ranged squads at peak and when you're in the state. The both states here that are included. So there's a lot of additional damage here. There is a lot of sustain through the damage reduction, the HP, things like that. And so it's a really good balance of both sustain and consistent rage skill usage, because you do obviously want to keep like Chasey's bonus basic attack damage and stuff up as long as possible, because it is a very huge buff. And also pairing that just with additional flat damages. Bonus basic attack damage, when you look at the math equation, is separate in the equation from squad damage. So you'll actually take like your base attack times your basic attack damage. Once you get that total number, then you multiply it by things like squad damage and such. So having these additional nodes that give you flat damage that's not just specifically or directly for basic attack damage, like this 23%, just further increases and amplifies that damage output that you'll have. So this here kind of sums up my overview for Rick. Again, it goes by fast. There is a lot to take in, so please feel free to go back into the video and watch it. Like I said, I didn't want to spend a lot of time just going through all the skills and stuff like that. You can read that on your own, but definitely wanted to highlight like where we see potential synergies for those Rider Garrison mains, and where, you know, like when it comes to the performance of the Garrison, how this might shine. Now, because there is so much AoE capabilities here, I do see a world where this does very well versus counter rallies, or I'm sorry, multi-rallies and against swarms and such. However, you are, when you look at the AoE, only hitting up to 3 nearby targets on both of them. So as opposed to something like Ethan currently that pairs with Chasey, where he hits up to 5. So it'll be very interesting to see how she does perform, because obviously the biggest weakness right now for Rider Garrisons is not the fact that it can't deal damage, but it's the fact that when it gets swarmed or in a multi-rally plus swarms, it does tend to struggle a bit, because a lot of that damage is oriented and focused on a single target. So it does very well in single target garrisons. It starts to struggle a bit in that multi-rally and multi-rally plus swarms or single rally plus swarms environment. So I would love to see how this kind of does in that case, or in that type of environment. And, you know, hopefully I'm pleasantly impressed with it, because I know that a lot of Rider Garrison players are kind of looking for a solution to that. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on this. Comment down below what your thoughts are, how you feel about Rick coming out. Are you excited? Are you concerned? Are there any other pieces that maybe I missed with some of the synergies and such? I know that there were some synergies with like I said, with Janet and such, that we didn't really talk about in this video, but that's because a lot of those synergies kind of come from their kits and such. So obviously there are other synergies as well for field if you pair with other heroes and such. But again, I think that the primary reason why Rick is coming out to begin with is really that Garrison side of things. And so definitely wanted to talk about and highlight that in this video. Again, drop a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I am actively live streaming and such, and have been doing so for a bit. So I'm also going to have the Twitch channel below if you want to go get drop a follow there. I also have a community Discord where you can ask questions just like you would on this video. Ask questions about anything. Doesn't have to be Rick related. It can be anything Doomsday related. We also have a general chat where you can ask anything non-Doomsday related or just chat. I'll leave the link to that in the description also below. Come check it out. Come join. Come be a member of the Knowledge Syndicate. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Hug a loved one. Tell them you love them. Life is short. You never know when things will change. So love you guys. Talk to you soon. Peace. Every time